every year on the lunar calendar that the person passed away, they have the death anniversary where the family gets together and, does the prayers, gives the offerings of food and the paper money and whatever that family member liked so they can enjoy the afterlife. What's up everyone? Chào các bạn và chào mừng các bạn quay trở lại với podcast Slow and Clear của What's Up English. In today's podcast, you are going to learn a ton of words and phrases to talk about your family, but also to talk about family traditions and things related to family culture in Vietnam. So first, you will learn pretty much all of the words you need to talk about your family members of your immediate family, but also your extended family. And after that, we'll talk about the differences in culture between Western families and Vietnamese families. For example, do Westerners have a death anniversary? And how many generations live together in one house? So between Vietnamese families and Western families, there are a few big differences about the culture and the traditions. And so today we are going to talk about that, and you will be able to describe and talk about those things in English. But before we get to the podcast, I want to let you know about my new product called the 1000 Most Common English Words. So if you are a beginner learning English, then one of the most important things to do is learn the common foundational words of English. And so I've released a PDF and audio file. The PDF has a list of the 1,000 most common words, and each word has the IPA pronunciation, an English example sentence, and a Vietnamese translation of that example sentence so you can see how the word is used. It also has audio files for every single word. So first I say the word and then a pause so you can repeat the word to practice your pronunciation. And then I say the sentence and then another pause so there's time for you to repeat the sentence. If that sounds useful for you, then the link to this product is in the description. It's $79K, and if you buy it, I really appreciate your support, and I hope you love the product. And thank you to everybody who has supported my channel by buying the product or by commenting on my videos, liking, even just watching. Thank you, everyone, for all of your support. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so let's start the podcast. First, you're going to learn the words for talking about your family, like all of the members of your family and other words. To do that, I'm going to tell you about my family, all right? So, in my immediate family, I have a mother and a father who are both in their 60s, and I also have a sibling. A sibling just means a brother or sister. So my sibling is an older brother. He's about 3 years older than me. And I also have a stepbrother, a stepsister, and a stepmom. In English, when we put step before sister or brother or dad or mom, What that means is that person is a family member who is not blood related to you, not biologically related to you, but they are related through marriage. So when I was young, my parents divorced, and then my dad got a new wife, but she already had kids. And so her kids became my stepbrother and stepsister, and we could say she became my stepmom. To recap, in my immediate family, I have a mother, a father, an older brother, a stepsister, a stepbrother, and a stepmom. And I am the youngest out of all of them. We don't really have a specific word to describe the youngest child. We just say the youngest child. Like, we don't say con út or anything like that. If there are 3 kids and you are in the middle, that child is called the middle child. And the oldest one is the oldest child. So there's the youngest child, the middle child, or the oldest child. So now let's move on to the extended family. So my brother, my biological older brother, has a wife and a daughter. So his wife would be my, do you know? She would be my sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. So an in-law is someone that is also related to you by marriage. So for example, if you get married to your husband or to your wife, their parents are your mother or father-in-law, right? If your brother or sister gets married, their spouse is your brother or sister-in-law. All right, so my brother, he has a daughter, and she is my niece. My niece. Now, if my brother had a son, he would be my nephew. So your siblings' children are your nieces and nephews. And to them, you are their uncles or aunts, right? So now I'll talk about my extended family on my mom's side. So in daily English, you can talk about the family on your mom's side or your dad's side simply by saying, on my mom's side. For example, my granddad or my grandfather on my mom's side, or if they are your dad's father, you can say my grandfather on my dad's side. But you can also use the word maternal, which is an adjective that means on your mom's side, or paternal, which is an adjective that means on your dad's side. So your mom's mom would be your maternal grandmother, and your dad's mom would be your paternal grandmother. Maternal, paternal. So now I have one remaining grandparent who is my grandfather, and he's on my mom's side. So I have a maternal grandfather. I also have a few aunts and uncles who are my mom's brothers and sisters, and all of them live in England because my mom is English. She was born and raised in England. As for my father's side of the family, from what I know, I have an uncle and a few cousins who live in Montreal, Canada, and the rest of the extended family on my father's side live in Italy because my father was adopted by my grandfather who was from Italy. He has now passed away, but because he came to Canada in, I think, the 1940s, and he adopted my father in around 1960, but all of his family is still in Italy because he's from Italy. So I could say that my grandfather, he was not my biological grandfather, but we still consider him like a blood relative. I don't consider him as any different at all. All right, so that was my family. Let's recap on the words we just learned. So for your immediate family, you have a mother, a father, you have siblings, and your siblings are your brothers and sisters. Also, if one of your parents divorced and remarried, then you might have a stepbrother, a stepsister, a stepmom, or a stepdad. As for your extended family, you can have a grandmother, grandfather, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, and those are the main words we use in English. So one big difference and a mistake that Vietnamese people often make is they call their cousin their sister or their brother, because in Vietnamese, you call them your sister or your brother, right? But in English, your sister and brother is only the child of your mother and father. You have the same mother and father. Your cousin is a different word, and we don't call our cousins our sisters or brothers. So that's one thing to remember, because it can cause a bit of confusion. I remember with one of my friends, she said, "I'm hanging out with my sister." And I said, "What? I thought you didn't have a sister." And she was talking about her cousin. And then I realized, okay, yeah, your cousin. So it can cause a bit of confusion in English. All right, let's move on to some differences in tradition and culture between the West and Vietnam. So firstly, let's talk about extended families versus nuclear families. In the West, most of the households are just the parents and children. And when the children move out, then it's just the parents. But in Vietnam, many extended families live together. So there are a lot of different generations in one house. Sometimes 3, even 4 generations can live in the same house with the great-grandparents or something like that. And in the West, that is extremely rare. So that's one thing that is different. The next point is how Westerners take care of the elderly versus how the Vietnamese take care of the elderly. So when someone reaches the age of not being able to take care of themselves in the West, often people will put that family member in a retirement home or a nursing home. And these places, if it's a good one, they can be very nice because they take care of that family member, and then they get to live in a community with other people who are the same age as them. So they can be around friends, and of course the family will go in and visit them. But in Vietnam, usually the elders live at home and they are taken care of by the family. So I think that's a great way of doing it, but just, different cultures, different societies. I think it depends on the family with how they want to do it. I'm not going to say which one I think is better or not, because it just depends on what that person wants. If they want to be in a home or with their family. Okay, so another thing that is different between Western families and Vietnamese families is the parental involvement. So in Vietnam, it seems like the parents are a little more strict with their children than in the West. These days, I'm not so sure because I see a lot of parents these days not strict with their children at all. And then some are very strict. So it just depends. Also in Vietnam, it's often expected for the children to send money back to their parents. But in the West, you pretty much never hear about the kids sending money back to their parents. As for marriage, I'm not sure if this is still very common these days. I think it is, but kids are more pressured to get married than kids in the West. For example, I'm not married, and my family will just ask me, "Are you dating anyone?" And that's about it. They won't say, "Oh, you should find someone, you should get married." They never say that. And most Western families don't say that. They ask, "Am I dating anyone? If I am, how's it going? If not, then that's it. We move on to the next part of the conversation." Here's one thing I want to go over briefly, not too long, but one big difference between the West and Vietnam is in the West, you have a death anniversary. In the West, we don't have this death anniversary. So guys, I'm not an expert on this, okay? If I say anything kind of wrong, or if you want to add more information, please feel free to leave a comment. I talked with a few friends and tried to understand this part of Vietnamese culture as much as I could. So, from what I know, after someone in your family passes away, then there will be 49 days. And in that 49 days, the family maybe will go to temples, will pray, will leave offerings for that family member, because after 49 days, it is decided how they will reincarnate, how their next life will be. And again, I'm not an expert. I've heard there are lots of different traditions. Some do it after 49 days. Some do it after 100 days. And then every year on the lunar calendar, so every year on the lunar calendar that the person passed away, they have the death anniversary where the family gets together and, does the prayers, gives the offerings of food and the paper money and whatever that family member liked so they can enjoy the afterlife. And in the West, we do not do that. We simply have a funeral when someone passes away. And then maybe some people will go to their grave and leave flowers or leave something for them. But it's not a big celebration. I'm not sure if celebration is the right word, but it's not a big event every year for the anniversary of their passing. All right, so I don't want to make this podcast too long, but I think we are going to end with that. I hope you learned a ton of useful words to talk about your family. And again, guys, please don't forget to leave a comment if you want to correct something I said, or if you want to tell me more about your culture, because I think in different parts of Vietnam, they might do it differently. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Check out the 1,000 most common words in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.